Okay, folks, this week I got a couple questions about proof of claims. If you're not in the bankruptcy process, if you never filed bankruptcy, if you've never been a creditor, this is how creditors get paid. They get a form from the court to fill in and sign and send to the court with the proper documentation. It's called a proof of claim form. Proof, P-R-O-O-F. I have a sometimes hard time saying that. Proof of claim form. This form is the standard form set forth by the bankruptcy rules you file with the bankruptcy court. All it's asking you is, what is a proof of claim? Well, that's the form you use. What are you trying to do, or what are you trying to seek to do? Well, you're trying to seek to get paid as a creditor. Now, your proof of claim can either come in the form of a priority claim, a secured claim, or an unsecured non-priority claim. And just a quick rundown on what is a priority claim. Pretty much simple for most people. If you have taxes that you owe, let's say they're 940 or 941 taxes. If you have a domestic support obligation that you have to pay, that takes a priority status. Secured creditors, car loans, mortgages, maybe some furniture payments, maybe some jewelry payments if you finance those things, and there's a lien on it. In other words, the secured creditor has the ability to repossess the collateral. Then there's a lien on it, and if it's properly perfected, which they usually are, sometimes they're not, but if they are, then that creditor is a secured creditor. They're entitled to be paid as a secured creditor throughout the bankruptcy process. The lowest guy in the poll, or the lowest guy on the ladder, is the unsecured non-priority creditor. What are they? Well, they're store cards like Macy's, Dillard's, gas cards. Well, no, store cards could be secured, so let's leave those out of there. Gas cards like Shell, Exxon Mobil. Then you've got your personal loans. Let's say Uncle Bob lent you $500. Well, if you file bankruptcy, Uncle Bob is an unsecured non-priority creditor, and he gets treated with the Visas, MasterCards, unfortunately doctor bills, and everything else. So they are the lowest guys. They're usually last ones to be paid. So when you're looking at a proof of claim form, you've got to ask yourself as a creditor, what am I seeking? What's my status, number one? Am I secured, unsecured, or a priority? And if I am, then I'm going to file the claim. If you work in a doctor's office, you're not a priority creditor. I've seen too many doctors think they're and again, it's not the doctors themselves, it's their people. They want to get paid, and they think their claims are always priority claims. Unfortunately, you're not in the bankruptcy court. You're an unsecured non-priority. So when you file your claim the wrong way, somebody's going to object to it. Usually that somebody's going to be me, or somebody from my office is going to object to it. And we're going to say, no, this is not proper. And then you're going to have to come to court and try to justify your position. I'm not trying to be a bad guy. I'm just saying if you want to get paid, you got to file your claim properly. If your claim's not properly filed, we're going to object to it. So is the Chapter 7 trustees. So in either Chapter 7 or 13, a creditor to get paid is going to have to file a form. Once he files the form, there may be an objection. But I would highly recommend if your claim gets objected to, you go to court, you figure it out, and try to get paid under the bankruptcy court if there's any distribution to you. Hopefully that answers the question about the proof of claims. Other big issue, unfavorable recommendations. Folks, if you've been involved in a Chapter 13 proceeding, the trustee makes a recommendation to the court after the creditors meeting. So a bankruptcy gets filed, Chapter 13, gets filed up in Tampa. Tampa court kicks it, does everything it's supposed to do. Bam, all the creditors get notice. 341 meeting gets set. 341 meeting is the meeting of creditors, which usually takes place about 30 to 40 days after the date of filing. At the meeting of creditors, trustee is present. They're going to ask the debtor, meaning the person who filed, questions about the petition, which is the lawsuit, or the document that you signed starting the bankruptcy, the schedules, that's your income, your expenses, what you own, your real estate, your exemptions, if you have any executory contracts. That's where they're going to question you about what your income, what your expenses are, and your stuff. Then the trustee has got to issue to the court what's considered a favorable or an unfavorable recommendation. 99% of cases get an unfavorable recommendation, not because they're going to fail and not because the trustee is saying we're trying to kick your case out. That's not it at all. The trustee has a duty to the court to report any problems with the filing. For example, one of the biggest problems we're facing now is people's income. is going up and going down, or they've lost a job in the last 6 months and now they're unemployed, but they have something coming up in the future, or their income's fluctuating because it's seasonal. Those types of things will trigger an unfavorable recommendation. Likewise, if you're not paying enough to your creditors, if you're paying too much to your 401k, or if whatever issues come up, if the trustee believes that a private school is not warranted or necessary, then they're going to issue it as an unfavorable recommendation. Again, this is nothing to panic about. Those are issues which need to be resolved with the trustee's office before you go up for what's called the confirmation hearing. So if you're in Chapter 13 and you get an unfavorable recommendation, I'm not saying don't panic. I'm saying read it, work through the issues with your attorney, get the issues resolved, get the documentation to verify it. In other words, here's a perfect one. Let's say you get an unfavorable recommendation because you're spending $500 a month on prescriptions. The trustee may want you to justify that. So you go to Publix or you go to Walgreens and you ask them to do a printout. What do I spend each month on prescriptions? Or you show them canceled checks. Here's my prescriptions to Walgreens for the last 4, 5, 6 months. I mean, if you're claiming an expense of $500 a month, you better be able to justify it some way. So that all should be in your attorney's file beforehand. But if it's not, and you have to justify it, it should be easily enough to document. Once you do that, that should take care of the unfavorable recommendation, because it is a legitimate expense if you need it to survive. So that's really one thing. But when you get the unfavorable recommendation, don't panic, read it, take it apart, see what the trustee is asking for, and then work with your attorney to try to resolve it as quickly as you can. But you got to remember that your case is not going to come up for confirmation, or the second time of confirmation, usually for a couple months. So you've got time to work through those issues. And usually, if you're in Chapter 13, one of the things the trustees are asking for is they've got your income for the 6 months before you file. They're going to want to see your income going forward, especially if you're in one of those fluctuating things. Let's say, for example, you work in real estate or construction, and you don't have a salaried position, or you're self-employed. Well, guess what? The trustee is going to want to see, just make sure that you have the ability to make those payments to your creditors on a regular basis, and that you have the ability to take care of all your needs going forward. Because if your income's going like this, it's really hard for them to recommend to the court that you can go ahead with a planned payment that you may not be able to afford, and they're not going to do that. They want to make sure that they're telling the court the proper information on the day of confirmation. So hopefully I answered that question.